Hi, this is Logan from Builder.io, and today I wanted to show you how to create a section that has images inside of it that act as background images, and then when you hover over another element on the page, those background images change. To get started, we'll drag out a box and set its width to be the full page. And for now, we'll remove this height property and give it a minimum height of 500 pixels. That just means that if we add content that's more than 500 pixels, this box will expand to account for that, but at all times, it will try and maintain at least 500 pixels. Next, let's give this a name of section container. Now let's go ahead and drag in our first image. I have 3 images here that are ready to go. We'll get in our blue image. We'll go ahead and duplicate it. Get our sunset image. And our red image. Now that we've got these 3 ready to go, let's go ahead and style them so they're stacked one on top of each other. The best way to do that is with a style attribute for the position called absolute. So I've got the blue image selected right now, and when I hit absolute, you'll see that the blue image has disappeared and the sunset image is now on top of it. They're both in the same location right now. To help us in the future, let's go ahead and rename these to blue, sunset, and red. The sunset image and the red image both need to also have absolute positioning. So we'll go ahead and do that here. There we go. So we've got a section container which has blue, sunset, and red. And for each of these, what we want to do now is make sure that they fade between each other when we hover over an item. To get started with that, let's drag out a box. We'll place that above our section container so we can work with it. We'll call this our hover items. We'll insert another box. We'll call this a hover object. This hover object should be easy to locate on the page, so let's give it a fill color. And let's also make the text inside of it nice and legible. Once we've got that taken care of, I'll go ahead and place some text inside. And we'll do some final styling here by selecting the hover object, setting the padding to 20, and then setting all the paddings to 20. Finally, I'll adjust the width to be just the size of the text inside it. Let's go ahead and edit this text to be blue. We'll go ahead and duplicate our hover object. Set it to red. And sunset. There we go. Let's go ahead and get rid of this extra padding here that was applied to the hover items container. And we'll also change the child layout so that it's a row. And we'll also go into the advanced settings, adjust justify content, and choose space around. Alright, so our hover items are all styled and ready to go. So let's give them some functionality. What I'd like to do is declare something called state.activeImage and set it to the current value of that button. The easiest way to do that is to select one of our hover objects. We'll create a new event, and in this case we'll have a mouse enter event, and we'll perform an action. In this case, we want to run some custom code. We're going to use this state object here. We're going to declare state.activeImage equal to blue. Alrighty. So let's check to make sure that's working. If I hover over blue, I should now see blue for active image in my content state. Let's go ahead and do a similar thing for sunset and red. In this case, I'll just copy this custom code here. I'll set it to mouse enter. And in this case, I want to set it to sunset. Alright, so now in my content state right here, I should see it update between blue and sunset. Perfect. We'll finish this off by doing the red, by adding that final event. There we go. So we're creating this value which updates when we hover over these items, which is perfect. But our images are still not working. Let's go ahead and fix that. Since our red image is on the top and the easiest to tell if it's working, let's go ahead and get it selected. Then let's create a data binding. And in this case, we want to affect the style. And specifically, the opacity. So I'm going to say style.opacity. Then I'm going to run some custom code. This custom code should take the value of state.activeImage and evaluate it. And in order to evaluate it, we'll use a triple equal sign. And we'll check if the value is red. If that's true, we'll use a ternary operator to determine the true and false statements to run. The content that comes after the question mark represents what is true and what is false. So let's go ahead and do that. In this case, since we are binding to style.opacity, we want to return a value, specifically a number between 100 and 0. Let's go ahead and close this. Our current active image is blue, so let's set that to red. And now our red image shows only after we've hovered over this. Perfect. Let's go ahead and do something similar with our sunset. In this case, let's go ahead and click on the image here, head into our data. We'll create a new binding for style dot opacity. Once again, we'll check the value of state.activeImage. We'll check to see if it's sunset. If that's true, the opacity should be 100%. And if it's false, the opacity should be 0. Let's check to make sure that's working. We'll hover over blue. There it is. We'll hover over sunset. And we'll hover over red. Perfect. Let's go ahead and set up some transitions so that we're not snapping between the two. Let's go ahead and select our red image and make sure that it's visible. We'll head into our Style tab and we'll create a new property called Transition. Next, we'll define which style attribute to affect, in this case, opacity. Then we'll hit enter, and now we'll type the amount of time it should take to transition the opacity property. I tend to like the snappiness but visual effect of about 0.3 seconds. We'll space one more time, and this time define the timing function that we want to use. We'll use ease in out, and we'll hit enter and make sure this is working. So when red is visible and when sunset is visible, let's bring red back and bring sunset back. Now you might have noticed when I hover over red, you'll see that this sunset image flashes away right away and is replaced with the blue image very temporarily. Take a look. We want to fix that, and the best way to fix that is to actually update the binding of our sunset image. Let's go ahead and select our sunset image and go to that binding. Since the red image is always going to be on top of the sunset image, we don't actually need to set its opacity to 0 when the red image is visible. So let's add an OR, which is represented by the 2 vertical lines. That, for me, is the key right above the enter key. Alright, so next, let's go ahead and copy this evaluation. And this time, we'll say red. What this is saying is that if the state.activeImage is equal to sunset, or if it's equal to red, the sunset image should be at an opacity of 100%. Let's check out how it works now. We'll hover over the red, and we'll see that the sunset image is nice and in place, right up until we hover over red. Now we just need to make sure that when we hover over blue, and when sunset is selected, that transition is nice and neat as well. We'll go into the sunset image, and actually, let's go into the red image first, and head down to that style that we created with the transition, right here. I'll just copy this. Now I'll go into my sunset, my CSS properties. I'll create a new transition, and we'll affect the opacity in the exact same way. Let's check out how it works. If I hover over blue, it's nice and visible. If I hover over sunset, there it is. And red comes right in as well. Perfect. So let's talk about adding some content here. Since our images are right here and in absolute positioning, we should be able to add a section element right below them inside our section container. There they are. Let's go ahead and update our section container so it no longer has that minimum height. Additionally, let's go ahead and make sure that when an image overflows, it is hidden. To do that, let's go ahead and set our overflow to none, or hidden. There we go. Perfect. Let's go ahead and actually place our hover items in this section as well. And we'll update our section to be a little bit larger. In this case, we'll give it that minimum height property. Perfect. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to forum.builder.io or reach out to us through our support.